Hello rimfire friends, I hope everybody's doing well. The purpose of this video is to discuss how to buy vintage rimfire according to Mr. In-Range Rimfire, which is me, and kind of some of the tips and tricks I've used over the years to not get bitten or to get bitten less. So, like I have bought so many vintage rifles over the years, online and in person, without even seeing them, looking over them in depth or in detail rather. And, you kind of sometimes get bitten and sometimes you walk away with a steal. And these are the things that make buying vintage anything fun, especially rifles. So before you, I have this rifle that actually isn't mine. The owner of this rifle is the one who suggested this video and said, hey, it'd be cool, if you did a video kind of like outlining how one would look for a vintage rimfire and some tips and tricks to purchase one. So before I mention who he is, I'll talk about this rifle. This rifle came available online and the owner contacted the person. And I live on an island, Vancouver Island actually, in the west coast of BC, and there are lots of Gulf islands around, and the owner had to take a ferry to another smaller island to take a look at this rifle in person. The deal was made and they walked away. This is a Silhouette specifically built rifle. This is a Crico rifle. However, it is wearing an Anschutz, more modern Anschutz 1712 barrel. So it's kind of a custom build. It has a very nice matched trigger on it. As you can see here, just beauty. I should open it for you. And a very nice Crico action. You guys will remember my Crico video. So this bolt and everything is the same, except some minor differences, which I'll talk about in a second. Wearing this wonderful Anschutz 1712 barrel. Now, the former owner of this rifle had this kind of custom built in order to shoot silhouette matches. It was assembled by a very well-known local gunsmith here who worked with the silhouette shooters often. I think he was a silhouette shooter himself. And so it is put together with a very good pedigree, in my opinion. I know this gentleman's work I've actually purchased rifles that were assembled by him, and he's a very, very competent and well-known local gunsmith. So I would assume with a pedigree like that this rifle would have some provenance and would shoot well. And indeed, this rifle does shoot very, very well. The trigger is excellent. It functions well. Just some minor issues through age, because this is, an older rifle. It's probably, I would say, maybe 70s, perhaps as late as the early 80s, or I think 70s would probably be a good guess. I kind of did a little bit of playing around to see if it was even older than that, and I don't believe that it is. However, a rifle like this could have many different parts slapped to it over the years. It's missing the date stamp because it's been rebarreled, so you can't really tell. A 1712 Anschutz barrel will outshoot a Crico barrel, in my opinion. So that was a wise choice, and it shoots like an Anschutz, in my opinion. It shoots really well. So let's talk about a couple things. How do you go about buying this rifle in person? So you do visual checks when you go see a rifle like this. So the very first thing you do is you do a visual check. Are there cracks in the stock? Are there major blemishes that you should look at? So things that I like to look at are areas that are common stress points, such as here around any sort of metal. I like to also look and see if it's been refinished or altered. Is the metal proud or not proud, or is there any sort of strange anomalies that might occur? Usually cracks will occur, like I said, at pressure points here and back here. Sometimes you'll see them back here in the heel and toe areas. I also check the butt plate fitment to make sure it hasn't been refinished. You can very quickly tell that this rifle hasn't been refinished by the lines, by the kind of Crico typical kind of finish that they've put on it. However, you can probably see in this lighting, I've done my best to capture, that somebody has attempted some sort of something or other on this, or there's been some sort of chemical spill. You can see it better there where the finish is worn, and it's on both sides, although more pronounced on this side, which would be the opposite cheek side. So it's not a wear mark. I'm not sure what that is. It almost looked like somebody was trying to refinish it and seriously remove this area of finish, which is too bad because this is a nice piece of wood. There's some spalting in it, and it would look pretty good. Crico wood is usually pretty good, although from this period, most rifle manufacturers hit it with a terrible orange stain, and this rifle is the same. So anyway, to go back to it, check visually quick for cracks. The reason that's important to do very quickly is a shitty finish is no big deal. That can be redone if that's within your scope. If it's not in your scope, that's a deal breaker for you. But for most people, they could refinish that or clean it up really quick. It's not a big deal. There's nothing structural. Is there anything structural with this stock is the thing to look at. So on the outside, there's nothing structural with this stock. Sling studs are all right. Everything's decent on it. So after I have a quick visual look at this, and you can do that a lot of times online by really scrutinizing the pictures, asking for more, then I move on to things that aren't important to me. So well, just to back up, no cracks, no refinish issues, nothing major, nothing scary. Then I start looking at minor details. Is it even in the barrel channel? So as you can see, this barrel channel is quite generous because, well, it's been rebarreled. So that's not unusual. Is it even? So this one is slightly off, not unusual for the period. Even Anschutz are like that. More around the barrel, I mean. Around the action, is it tight? This one could be tighter, but again, kind of typical of the period, so it's not bad. Is it secure in the stock? It certainly is. So everything seems to be Bob's your uncle. I have a look at the stippling to make sure that nothing crazy has been done to it. You can see that the line of the stippling is very sharp, right? So again, that comes back to not being refinished. And then after I kind of get through those, me personally, I'm good. I don't worry about much else. Like I said, I don't really care too much about finish or stippling because, well, I can do it myself, so I don't care. But for you, that might be for a deal breaker. Then we start going on to the metal. Now, why do I choose the stick first? Because in my experience, the wood being softer is going to get the most wear and impact and will indicate the overall condition of the rifle. I baby my rifles. I'm very careful with them. Most of the people I shoot with are as well. And so the overall kind of functionality and appearance and, I don't know, the way the rifle will present itself has a lot to do with how the previous owner treated the wood. Because wood is soft, you got to be gentle with it, you got to be nice to it. So generally, if the wood is good, the metal will follow suit, and the wear and the cleaning and all that, in my opinion. So after I have a good look at the wood, I move on to the metal. Now, this rifle, I think, has led a hard life before it was rebarreled. I think it was a donor project because whatever happened to the barrel warranted it. So this rifle has had a lot of miles. Now, a lot of miles doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be a shooter and it's not a good purchase. It's just there's some things that you should be looking at. I can tell here on the bolt, the visual part that I can see, and the reason I have not opened this for you yet, there's a reason, is because this might be all that you see online. Sometimes they're closed and you might be able to see only that. And so when you look at it, you can see that there's some pitting and there's some scratches, and I don't know if you can make those out. But it's had a rough life, okay? The bluing is good, but that was something that would stick out to me right away. So before we get into that, we look at the bluing. Again, the barrel doesn't count because, well, it's from a modern Anschutz, but the bluing on the exterior looks pretty good. But again, this would normally have, there's no sights on this rifle. That would normally cover it up with a scope. So you wouldn't see a lot of wear because the scope sitting on top would protect this area from any sort of craziness. If it had sights, you might, like apertures rather, you might see scratches or whatever. But a big scope sitting on here is like a shield, right? It's like a barrier, so you won't see too much. So you got to look past that, which is my point of this, is like if you're looking online and you're like, oh yeah, the bluing looks good. Well, it will look good because it was meant to wear a scope. So look past that. So we're looking at this, and then we kind of look in this area here. Can you see any galling or wear? And we can see a couple shiny spots here and there. We try to see if we can see any on the kind of locking lug bolt handle. Is there anything weird? And then I would notice that this bolt handle has been threaded, which is unusual for Crico, but not unusual for a customized Crico Anschutz barreled rifle. Somebody would have done that. That's a nice touch to me, because then you can put your own custom bolt handles and a softer, warmer plastic in the cold weather. That's nice. So I have a good look at stuff like that. Make sure everything's legit. And again, this one looks pretty legit. So let's talk about the next part, which is the visual appearance of the metal looks good. Everything that we can see in this, if it was looking on this picture online. So what do you do next? Well, you normally cycle the rifle, right? Well, let me tell you, this rifle cycles like as good as an Anschutz 54. It is really nice. I have no complaints about this. It was actually one of the things that I really liked about it. Was that like if you've never had a Krico, and like I kind of gush over Krikos because I think they're such a hidden gem, especially this kind of leading up to this period. This was a nice match rifle, and so it was made to a certain standard. I've talked about it many times. So this is a nice feel. It's a nice function. So I have no complaints. We're going to pop the bolt out for you guys. And then, so if you were looking at this in person, it's one of the things that you'd want to look at is you would check bolt function. Well, that feels great. I think that's awesome. You don't always have that luxury when you're buying online. So you can't always do that. I've asked gun shop employees over the phone, hey, can you cycle the bolt? And they're like, well, feels okay. Feels like a 22. So, it's more important to hear it over the phone than anything else. Do you hear those positive, feedback from the mechanical motions? So let's get this bolt out of here. And then I'm going to tell you what I think. So looking at this Krico bolt, you can probably see there some pitting. So this level of, maybe you can't. There you go. There you go. This level of pitting only happens from neglect, in my opinion, meaning that this rifle was kind of put away in a certain way and left to sit in an environment that should have been. I'm not quite sure, but either way, somebody didn't shoot this for a long time or somebody didn't care for it. None of my rifles have that in my care. Probably none of yours either. So it's important to realize that at one time this rifle had some hard life to it. So we look at some kind of basic things on it, and you can get a good kind of window of understanding of this rifle's wear pattern and its life. You can really see, because like every rifle will have machine marks, and this rifle is no different. So you can kind of see at what level those machine marks have been worn out from use and how things have been changed. You can have a look at the bolt face, at the firing pin, extractors. Again, you can't take this bolt apart in most circumstances, so you kind of have to have a visual check, and you just kind of look. You can have a good look at the extractors and the cartridge holder, and you can see how much wear this has had. In my opinion, this has had some custom set installed. These look very nice. Somebody's polished them within an inch of their life. They might actually have been custom made, I think. So that's interesting to me for sure. But anyway, so you have a good look at the different kind of functions of a Krico bolt. And it doesn't matter if this is a different bolt than you're used to. Like you're not sure of this action, for example. You never had a Krico before. It doesn't matter. You can look at certain parts of this rifle and see where the wear patterns are. You can see one right on top there. There's a shiny pattern there. So that would be as the bolt rides inside the receiver. And then you can look at the lockup areas. This one has a nice ball bearing detent like most Krikos, so it will have positive lockup. You can see the sear engagement surface. Just have a good look at overall condition. I'm taking my time here so you can kind of see with a rifle as many miles as this, what a proper made rifle that's been semi-neglected looked like. And you can see that this rifle was manufactured well, and that the blued surface are not the weared surface, just a little bit here. It's pretty impressive. Oh, the gushing over Krikos. And then we have a good look in there, and you can see the shiny spots here and there in the receiver. That's important. You guys will know if you've owned a rifle how much wear, a rifle will have is indicative of the miles, right? So this one has, I don't know if I'll be able to pick it up from the angle, but you can see that. Oh, yeah, again, look at that. See that little dot there, little shiny dot? Blam! That is a wear spot of the ejector. So that's where the cartridge hits when you cycle the bolt and it kicks it out. That shiny spot is a rounded corner that from wear, from brass hitting it over and over again. That's important in this particular rifle because a Krico, our parts are unobtainium. So this will cause slight cartridge ejection issues. And you wouldn't know to look for that, I think, in most circumstances unless you've experienced it before. So that little dot, that little Jedi Death Star dot is important to realize exists because you're guaranteed to have interesting occasional ejection issues, which this rifle does sort of sometimes have. Not a surprise. So how would you fix that when you're looking at a rifle like this? Well, the only way to fix that is to have a TIG weld dot of steel on there, reshape it, and build the material back up. Unless you can find a donor rifle where this will fit. Many different Crico models, hard to do sometimes, but that's really your only other option. To me, well, it doesn't have to be TIG welded. You could MIG weld it too. Stick weld, doesn't matter. For me, this would not be an issue, but for some of you, that would be an issue. So Death Star, high spot, glimmer, sparkle, whatever you want to call it, keep an eye on that sort of thing. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the Crico in particular, other than what I've already talked about, because when I take this rifle out of the stock, it's not going to apply to you. It's only going to apply to the Crico, but the idea will be there. The next thing that came up was something that myself and the owner of this rifle were appalled by, and I always am appalled by, is some monkey using the wrong size screwdriver and ruining flathead or whatever type of, in this particular vintage, it's flat, ruining these screws. Not all of them, because, well, you don't need to take out that one, that just holds the trigger guard, but this one here. It's using the wrong size screwdriver, as we all have bought rifles and seen rifles, and it ruins an overall appearance. It also makes it very difficult to get torque on that thing, and, you know, it's kind of a pain because you want to be able to set action screw torque, and I have pre-loosened these off camera because, well, I'm going to work on this screw for the owner of this rifle and try to make it look half decent, and like it was hard to get a screwdriver on it. Such a shame, because that's just a care issue, and it comes back to where the bolt has pitting on it issue. Somebody at one time was a little bit careless with this otherwise beautiful rifle, which might have, like I said, led to it being a good price and might have led to it being a donor rifle for an Anschutz barrel. But look at that. What the chicken are you doing? Get away from the rifle. Screwdriver too. So that's something to consider when you're looking at stuff like that, is if you're dealing with an action screw. And this action screw is not something that's off the shelf. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a nice taper on those threads because, well, it's a German-made Crico, so why use an off-the-shelf? Meaning that this is tapered shank and the threads are, I'm sorry for my lighting, it was to get the rifle on the table. The threads are thicker. I mean, like, more pronounced. So you could make this, but it wouldn't be simply off the shelf. Okay, so we'll set that one aside, and I'll take off the back one. Now, I would say in 1% of cases am I able to do this. Usually I'm able to do this if I'm buying a rifle from a fellow shooter or somebody I know who's willing to take this off or show me pictures or let me do it. But most times, you know, you buy online or you buy from somebody at a show or something, and you don't get to do stuff like this. Rear action screw is a little bit more normal. Oh yes, has this cool spacer because, well, it's a Crico. Don't lose that. Okay, so if you're fortunate enough to be able to take the action of the stock, that's one of the things that I'd look for. What does this Crico have going on in the stock? It's a beautiful German cut profile. Nothing to say about that. Absolutely gorgeous. Nice recoil lug there because, well, it's a Crico again. And it doesn't look like it's been cut with a chisel by a beaver. So super beautiful. A lot of times that these will be free floated and manipulated. This one isn't. It's been factory cut. There's been nothing done or altered to the stock that I can see. No stuff whatsoever. So you only option to modify the stock if you were considering doing that would be to have a very slender pillar installed here. Even bedding would be choice because of the lack of the surface area, maybe back here at the tang if that's something you're considering. But anyway, I would have a look to make sure there's no splits or cracks or anything like that. I was also, like I said, double check what I already figured, that there was no refinishing done. And that's it for the stock. Let's set it aside. So let's talk about the action here. And again, like, this is not specific. This is only generic, I would say. If I was able to remove it from the stock, I would look at how many times this has been removed from the stock. Is this something that's been broken or repaired? This hasn't been. There's only honest wear on this here and there. You can see the blue surfaces are highly polished. All the E-clips and C-clips have not had any removal to them. There's no scratches trying to remove them. So nobody's been inside this trigger. That's happened to me so many times. which is excellent. Just some wear on the side here from the safety engagement, probably rubbing up against the edges of the stock. No big deal. A lot of times Cricos, for example, will have cracked trigger guards. I've seen that many times. Not so on here. Everything looks as it should. So no big deal there. Now, I didn't spend too much time talking about this barrel. I would normally say that, you know, it's a generic thing that everybody does. They look through the barrel of the rifling and they're trying to see something that they really can't see. What are you going to see? A dirty, foul barrel? There's no point in looking through a 22 rimfire barrel because it'll look, well, dirty and like a 22 rimfire barrel. You can't really see anything. On the older rifles, you know, like our grandpas would have had, you could see if it was frosted rifling. You could see if it was dirty, like, I mean, black from corrosion. But modern rifles, it's very difficult. You're not really looking at anything. More important thing is to look at the crown. What's been done with this crown? You know, this crown to me has been, this barrel has been altered and it has been cut, recessed. It's a beautiful crown. I have nothing bad to say about it. It's actually quite nice. I like it. I know that, like I said, this gunsmith is very well regarded and his work is top notch. So I have nothing bad to say about that. But again, some wear on the edge from a jabroni doing what he shouldn't have been, not being as careful as he should have been. But I'm not spending too much time on that barrel because I know it's newer and it's been done properly. So you can always, on your rifle, check the extractor cuts. Try to get that in the light there for you. It's not working for me. Right? You know, you can do that sort of thing and make sure. But there's not much you can do without chambering and firing, which leads me to the next thing. If you're fortunate enough to be able to be at the range, like I am so often, and are allowed to fire this rifle, you shouldn't really be looking at groups at first. You should be looking at feeding, ejection, look at those cases, primer imprint, case imprint rather. That's more important at first than actually group size, because that will indicate so many problems or lack thereof than actually groups, because groups can be ammo specific, right? You know, you could shoot through CCI and it'd be an okay group and you're like, well, I don't think I'll buy this rifle because it didn't shoot that well with CCI standard. But if it ejected and extracted like a champ, oh God, you could, you know, so many different ammunitions you could try. So before I even look at accuracy, if I'm able to fire it, I slowly cycle. I try a couple different brands. I'll even try high velocity in it to see how it does, if the case swells, all sorts of different things. If you're fortunate enough to buy from your chum or somebody you've known and seen the rifle in action, well, then it's a no-brainer because you've seen it, you've seen its problems if it has any, and away you go. Okay? So that's important to consider. So those are all some things that I'm trying to cover, help you guys out if you're looking at a vintage rimfire. Normally, mainly, you can't take it apart and see like you're doing now. So you got to kind of back up and go with the guide in the beginning. Now, all this happened in person for this owner of this rifle, and a deal was struck. If I remember correctly, he actually was able to fire this rifle and shoot groups, and everything was legit. And the new owner paid the man, took the rifle, and away he went. Took it home, took it apart like you see here, and found a very serious issue. I do not believe that the original owner would have known of this issue, but maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe he sold a lemon. I don't know. Wasn't involved. But inside this bolt, inside the cocking cam, is a crack. And that is a catastrophic issue that is only fixable, I believe, by a replacement part. It would take a skilled welder to fix that part. And therefore, this rifle bolt might be fine forever, and it might fail at any time due to the cocking cam inside the Crico. I'm not going to show you that now because it's pointless. It doesn't matter. My point to that is you would never be able to know that until you got to the stage of disassembling a bolt. And you and I both know that nobody disassembles a bolt in front of a purchaser. It just doesn't have, or a seller rather, you're the purchaser. Nobody gets to do that. So it's always a risk because you can't take everything out. You can't take everything apart, although it would be nice to. Basically, you buy it visually based on looks. That's what you do most times. And you kind of take your chances that the structural part of the rifle is fine. It's fine if it's a Savage, a CZ, or an Anschutz. But when you're dealing with Walthers or Cricos or Schultz and Larsons, older obsolete rifles, not obsolete, older non-manufactured anymore, discontinued rifles, you have a risk that is important to consider. Would that stop me if I had known, if I had taken this apart and found the crack? Would that have stopped me from buying this rifle? No, 100%. I still would have bought this rifle. Based on everything else that I see here, I absolutely would have bought it. Would I bought it for the same price that this buyer bought it for? Yes, I probably would have, or very close to, because I believe this rifle, the sum of its parts, sorts this out. This is a very nice built rifle, great shooter for the price he paid. I think he did really well. So I wouldn't feel bad at all. I hope he doesn't either, because this is kind of the game of buying vintage rifles. And like I said, that wouldn't concern me at all. So it has to do a lot of times with your comfort level on things. You know, how you feel comfortable in navigating potential problems. Is it a no deal, yes deal for you kind of thing? Because if this sort of rifle is a no deal for you, then you should stay away from vintage rimfires until you're comfortable with purchasing them, because I find problems all the time. Some of you guys, could probably remember. I'll link in the description. Some of you guys might remember my Anschutz 64 1403 video. I bought a 1403 online from a vendor, and there was literally epoxy screws, and the trigger housing was full of missing screws and glue, trying to turn the two-stage trigger into a single stage. It was the worst trigger I'd ever seen, missing all sorts of parts. Can't know that's in a stock from a vendor. Still kept the rifle, still shot the rifle, whole 9 yards. But anyway, it's something for you guys to consider. If it's too much, well, there's lots of new rifles on the market, and I've seen lots of butchered, having said that, I've seen lots of butchered 457s for sale that look pretty in the stock, and you take them apart. Maybe not lots, but they'll have issues. Any rifle can have issues based on a previous owner. So it's something to consider. So I'm going to leave this one here. Oh, I've talked about this really quick. I should talk about this first. This is a Crico mag. This is different than an Anschutz 5-rounder, although it looks the same. They're very similar. They can be modified to fit, as can Savage Mark II mags, because of the similarities. So if your rifle doesn't have one or it's broken, it can be modded. Not to worry on this Crico. Crico uses 2 different mags. So there's one that's a little bit different, that's much harder to modify than this one. So if you're looking for a Crico, I would choose this variety if at all possible. You can still make mags for the other one, and you can find them overseas sometimes, but this is definitely the magazine to get. This is a very nice example. I am pretty sure this is an original one, although I have seen some over the years that looked original and I was told was not, but this one looks original to me. So I would say that this is original mag, and they're worth quite a bit of money, like Anschutz mags. So this mag in Canada, if I was to find one used, I would expect to pay about $125, $150 for a 5-round mag, if you were going to do that. Now, that sounds crazy, but an Anschutz new 5-round mag is about $100 Canadian. So it's not that crazy. And I would, of course, choose to spend a little bit of extra money to get a mag that would actually fit, rather than have to mod a $100 mag myself in that circumstance, because, well, this rifle deserves it. It's a beauty. So anyway, so that's over and done with. We'll talk about that sort of thing maybe later if we need to modify mags for this. And I should back up and say that, like, this, the circle clip here and the extractors, you can all make those out of different parts. It's not a super big deal. If you remember, I made some for a 455 out of Sawzall blades, which were very easy to do. I made it and slapped it on the rifle, and it worked like a charm. So you can make stuff like that. It's not crazy. You can retrofit things. These can be made from other rifles. Not a big deal. Everything's totally fine. The firing pin springs are a little bit different, a little bit harder to get here for this sort of thing. But again, most times, you should be okay. I had to shim one. We can talk about that later. It's hard to tell sometimes. But anyway, I'm going to leave this one here. Any questions or comments, leave them below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I should also add, if you got some tips or tricks that I left out that you use to buy a vintage rimfire, because I know I only use my method, you guys are going to have your own method, add them in the comments below, and maybe I'll do an update with your guys' tips and tricks to them. But thanks as always for watching. I'll catch you guys at the next one.